Going to start. My name is Fawzia Faruqi. I teach South Asian language and literature, Indian culture, and gender and sexuality studies courses at Princeton. Here, I'm welcoming you all as the executive director of Samanvay Space. Samanvay is a non-profit cultural organization dedicated to the preservation, promotion, and appreciation of Indian arts. We work with all forms of arts, including music and performing arts, visual arts, and literary arts. For last 4 weeks, we have been organizing online events in 4 different categories: music and performing art, visual art, poetry and literary art, and talk and discussion. Today is the last talk of our first 4 week event series. So, as an organization which is dedicated to promoting art, it is only apt to reflect on the question about the role of art in our society and its value for human existence. And therefore, the topic of today's talk is, can art heal the world? Well, who can answer this question better than our speaker today, Mr. Sriram Karri? He's an artist who uses words to create his art. Well, he's a novelist, and he's constantly keeping an eye on the world because he is also a journalist. So we are fortunate to have Mr. Sriram Karri with us today, who is an acclaimed novelist, a writer, a columnist, who has worked at various national and international newspapers, including The Hindu, The Indian Express, and the New York Times. He is currently working as the resident editor for the Deccan Chronicle. Please welcome our guest speaker, Sriram Karri. Sriram, you are on. Welcome to Samanvay. The floor is yours.
Hi, I think we finally have internet and
Okay.
great pleasure to see all of you and I'm appropriately sitting in my library and behind me, if nothing else, if I don't have much within me, behind me is about 2,000-3,000 years of literature, history, politics, some of the works of the greatest philosophers ever. I may not have read all of them, don't fall for it. We all have bigger libraries than we've actually read. And I think it goes for me too. When I first discussed this topic with Pavanji and Fawzia and I was trying to ask myself, have I bitten more than I can chew? Can I really speak on behalf of art, and not just written art in the sense of literature or even non-fiction and writing in that sense, but can writing heal the world? Do we have something to say that's so important, so profound, that can make a difference to the world? And this in a context of a world where we're not sure how many people read. Does writing sounds too elite? Who are we writing for, etc.? Expand this from beyond writing or to cover painting, dance, music. And are we, like in politics, so divided that there's one art for art's sake, and then there's one art that's so popular, but yet so intellectually insignificant, morally so confusing and so lowbrow, so to say. So we are caught up with these themes. But I like to take the pleasure at this moment to ask you to travel with me about 3,200 odd years back. But 24 centuries, I think, 24 centuries back, 320 to 400 years back, before Christ was born. Let's go to Greeks, the Greeks who had one time created one of the most fascinating, enlightened culture known to mankind, of philosophy, of architecture, of debate, of politics, of poetry, of plays in the form of tragedy, especially. And in amongst those Greeks, one of the wisest of them all, Aristotle, asked a question. And he said it rather beautifully, like Aristotle does with so many profound themes. He would begin with a very simple question. He asked, what is more important, history or literature? It seems a very strange question. History is more important, or is literature more important? Was he comparing two unnecessary things, two parallel lines? But he answered it thus. He said, history is important because it teaches man how men in the past have lived, how they've actually lived. But literature is far more important than history because literature can teach men how to live. Now, this single distinction between fact based recording of the past, which would cover all of history, all of anthropology, all of archaeology, would cover disciplines like journalism. Journalism is a very small, uh, petty discipline actually at this level, chronicling, and even most of sociology. All these, the entire non-fiction world, the world of knowledge, the world of research, the world of chronicling that that has happened now or in the past, seemed to Aristotle to be able to make a lesser impact on man and mankind. And here, please forgive me for the gender kind of usage. I definitely don't mean man as in male, of course, and I'll try and say womankind and humanity and all that once in a while. But what Aristotle was saying was literature, which is imaginative, which is, so to say, a lie, factually, has a greater potential to impact the future, to impact individuals, and to impact society at large. That if you would like to shape the future and create a society of the kind you would like, its foundations are based on art. And as a corollary, if you look at any society, its rise or fall precedes by a rise and fall in the standards of art. Political corruption, business corruption, social corruption, moral degradation of society at large is preceded with signals in art. What people are willing to accept, to read in a book, to hear in the form of a poet, to see depicted in a painting, to watch as an acceptable form of entertainment in a movie or a theater and play is more likely to become a reality tomorrow. And this holds true by and large across these 23 centuries since Aristotle said this. Let us now look at what does literature really do, what it is, what are the various impacts that we have visibly, demonstrably seen over the last thousands of years, and in particular, the last century. For example, if you recall, as a story of history, after the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus Christ, the spread of Christianity as a philosophy, I call it philosophy more than religion, and of course, theology and religion, was not just about military conquest, was not just about evangelists reaching out and converting people one at a time or in groups, as much as its depiction in art. We all know Milton, what Milton has done when Christian, the character in an allegory, Milton's Paradise Lost, and regained subsequently, navigates through a maze of moral questions and situations. When Christian takes on greed, when Christian takes on fear, when Christian takes on temptation, these questions, as depicted as brilliantly as, of course, as Milton did, set a template, a moral acceptance in society for subsequent actions, militarily, socially, and by an organized church to win the world at large for Christianity. This is the kind of transformation that would not have been possible. Flip it to about 4 years ago, and I was constantly on media, various television channels, debating the possibility of Trump versus Hillary Clinton. And I had very strongly said, I do not see the possibility of Hillary Clinton becoming president at all. And this without even reflecting on Trump and the appeal of his kind of politics and the kind of changes in America in the last 8 years under an Obama to have led to a possibility of the pendulum swinging to the other side. I had said, if you had read Irving Wallace's The Man, the idea of an Afro-American president, the idea of a black president has been implanted in art, both serious art initially and popular art subsequently. You must have seen movies, doomsday movies, where the president is black. And this, therefore, found resonance in people that it's a natural reality of tomorrow. And therefore, there wasn't that kind of a structural opposition in society as free and liberal as America to the idea of somebody of a particular race representing the entire nation. However, there is no Irving Wallace's The Man equivalent with a women president. We have not in art seen a women president at work in America taking on a global challenge, taking on the communist Soviet bloc or the popular adversary to American way of life these days is Islamic fundamentalism. And we'll reflect on that problem as depicted in modern day reality, media versus the bias in art, etc. in a bit. But there was no women president in art for us to correlate and create our hearts and minds to prepare the soil where Hillary Clinton could have come and gracefully slipped in. So Hillary lost not to Trump, but to the lack of imagination in any artist in the last 50 years to have envisioned a women American president. This is the relationship I would like to offer to you as a point to reflect upon, as is the relationship between art and reality. If you have seen the last 100 years of history, the greatest events we have been told, or the Russian Revolution, October Revolution, or the formation of this Soviet bloc, the Iron Bloc after the World War II, the creation of United Nations post the end of World War II, especially the nuclear question, the 1979, revolution in Iran, for example, the total Islamic revolution, the Arab Spring some time ago, we have been given to understand, and of course the collapse of the Soviet Iron Curtain and various communist countries falling and adopting a different alternate contrasting way of life, of democracy, of relative free markets, etc. All these we have been made to believe that revolutions happen on the streets. Nothing can be more wrong than that. Revolutions end in the streets. They begin in the minds of individuals, in the minds of people when they're alone, sitting at home with a book in their hand, watching a movie, or listening to a song, a poem, that spreads from one to one and then becomes a social force once it acquires a tipping point. Of course, some ideas achieve a tipping point, some don't, that's a different issue. But every major change has been incubated in art first. Let's take a look at French Revolution. We all know that Parisians, so oppressed, so pushed in terms of lack of dignity, took and stormed the prison called Bastille. They then got hold of the monarchs, including the famous Mary Antoinette, who said, let them have cakes, not so, just a few weeks before. And she was beheaded. But where did this revolution begin? It began about 6 years back when the social contract was born as a theory. Of course, it was born in England in the form of John Locke, but it was Jean-Jacques Roch who said, man is born free and everywhere he is in chains. It started with Voltaire, who said, there are three, this is the three estates model, that the first estate was the nobles, the kings, and those who fought, and the second estate was the clergy, and the third estate was the commoners. And he said, what is the third estate? We are everything. What do we have? Nothing. What do we want? Something. And he more famously said, the first estate, that is the nobles, fight. The second estate, the clergy, prays, and the common man pays. And eventually, it was the famous statement of Voltaire when he said, 90% of France dies of hunger, 10% of indigestion. Now, this kind of an intellectual foundation led to the greatest revolution in America. Now, ironically, when the French Revolution was happening, England decided, the French Revolution was a consequence of a revolution that happened across the pond in America some time ago. The American Revolution, again, looks in history misrepresented partially as having been led by the brave sword of George Washington. But do not forget again, the American colony founded by people who moved from this side. Some of them were criminals, some of them were outcasts. They created America in the mold of a rebellion against everything England represented. Racist, imperialist, where the divine rights theory was naturally assumed. America became a non-monarchical country and continent in a sense, where man was always free because of this idea in the minds of these people. And this led to the American Revolution succeeding with the Bill of Rights and said inalienable rights, among them, the right to pursuit of happiness. Ironically, in the American War of Independence, France participated. The monarch in France, Louis XVI, thought it'll be a nice way to pay back to England, to make the British crown lose an empire by supporting the American revolutionaries. General Louvois, who crossed over to America and led the French in fighting against the British for the Americans, came back with the idea from the Bill of Rights that men are equal, men are free and should be free. And it was this that led to the famous slogan, Equality, Liberty, Fraternity, Equality, Liberty, Fraternity. So thus, central to all human action of consequence, very consequent to all things that will make or break a society, are ideas. And very often these ideas get implanted. Don't forget, ideas have always belonged to the elite in a theoretic sort of a way, but they become practical to the common people only in two ways: art and great leaders. For example, Mahatma Gandhi made it possible for everybody to understand the ideas of non-violence and truth through his own personality, through his own action. mankind has, and I will say this in a manner of a polemic so that you can question me, so that fight with me, it's easier to create great art than great leaders. It will be unwise for mankind to trust that great leaders will come tomorrow and take great ideas to people to form great society. Art is a more convenient medium. Art is a more predictable medium. There'll always be more great artists in society than great leaders. There have been more books which could have taken the idea of Gandhism and have indeed done than number of Gandhis we've had. This is so true that the greatest ideologies of all time and the worst ideologies of all time have understood the importance of art. If you recall, communism knew that despite the tanks, despite the nuclear weapons, despite conquering country after country after country, the only way to sustain it, besides false propaganda, was art. So, which is why poetry or songs of sons of the soil leading revolution, where labor will be free, more than Das Capital, that slogan, workers of the world unite, singularly led to capturing the imagination of people. So, thus, can art do something significant throughout history? It has influenced the future course of actions. It has influenced the thinking of people, which makes it possible for politics or religion to come and make a difference. It doesn't come later, it precedes it. So, in other words, if the world is hurt today, if the world is intellectually seeming bankrupt today, if we seem divided by hatred, if we identify each other not by the best thoughts we have in our minds, not the greatest actions we are capable of, but by the limitations of our identity of birth, of the caste we are born in, of the country we are born in, of the skin color we have, of the gender we were born with, and of course, religion in the context of India. And we are not willing to look at anything else. Somewhere, let's look back. And I will tell you, look back only through something as simple as Bollywood. Such a plebeian, high polite, lowbrow art that no serious philosopher or intellectual bothered to think about. And there be no movie critics who warned you. When you had a movie like Gadar 20 odd years ago, you said, oh, what a bad movie. Wow, smart guy, some producer using hate to collect huge amounts of money. What was the movie about? It was a movie that clearly said, post-partition, you have a country of love called India, you have a country of hate called Pakistan. They continue to hate us. And the only way we can counter them is to forsake our ideas of secularism, is to abandon our ideas of acceptance of every creed as a way of life and forge a common way of life called the Indian way of life. And instead, physically butcher those who disagree with us because they are not secular, they are communal. This idea was planted in Gadar. A couple of years later, Godra happened. Gadar, Godra. Think about it. Think about it very seriously. Because of the nature of the actor, nature of the movie, it's such a dirty, popular front bencher success of a movie. We miss the warnings. But make no mistake, no politician can popularize the idea of communal bias without the help of art, without the help of bad poems, bad songs. Go back to Nazi history and ask, what did Nazis attack first? Did they attack England? Did they attack France? No, they attacked their own artists. The first people to be attacked were not Jews. Homosexuals, prostitutes, communists, they all followed. The first people Nazis attacked in a Fahrenheit 451 sort of a way was to attack their libraries. The most dangerous enemy of every negative ideology of hate is the librarian. Who do you think the terrorists in Pakistan were afraid of when they pointed a gun at Malala? What were they scared of? They were scared of some guns. They're scared of a 6, 7-year-old girl wanting to go to school and study Alif Be, Pe, Te, etc. Ironically, while those who carry the ideologies of hate know the value of art, liberals have never understood it properly. Those who stand for a broad-minded world do not understand it. Publishers of books have never understood the value of what they do over the future of their country and mankind, which is why they've treated it in the most unethical sort of a way, where publishing has become a cabal of Delhi. 12 publishers, 18 editors, 36 parties a year, cheese, wine, hugs, a particular dress code. All writers who get commissioned and published are your friends. And the copies that sell 2,000, 3,000, 5,000, they thought it was just a nice racket on the side. What they did not know was by in such a process silencing the greatest of voices who are not necessarily connected, you have never given liberalism, true ability to respect those we disagree with, true democracy, any chance whatsoever. The lynchings began when you lynched the authors you did not agree with, in the form of a indifferent rejection letter. You destroyed this country when 20 years back, one television channel that had 85 odd% did not choose to engage with a set of ideas it did not like, and in the process pushed them to find alternate means, which they did in the form of WhatsApp. And now they're not coming back to discuss with you anymore. You have been left out of the discussion. This is the way compromise and corruption in art has created a world which is unsafe for good ideas and very convenient for bad ideas. Now, as a planet, we are in peril. We are in agony. We are like a fourth stage cancer patient as humanity. The earth is locked down. Our environment is sick. Our soil is poisoned. Our air is poisoned. Our media is dividing us and never tells us the truth. More often than not, it's an opinion, it's a biased opinion, with a particular interest behind it. Our art is so mediocre, is a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. When you began copying Romeo and Juliet, and now the boy and girl just need to see each other, they are in the bed next scene, and they kill each other next scene. No need to say anything else. We've accepted it. And this has led to acceptance of bad politicians, bad economists. Bad politicians lead to bad academics, bad educational institutions have decayed. All this has happened. But the moral corruption began. The barometer was always art. So now go back to the question I asked. Can art heal the world? And indeed, can it? So I'll challenge all of you. I'll challenge you to my experiments with truth model to answer this question for yourself. Do my experiments with art for the next 48 hours. For 24 hours, spend 6 hours on Netflix, watch the most popular movies, whether you like it or not. See what is the crux of it. Read the most popular bestsellers, thrillers without purpose, or the rhetoric of those empty people who have really nothing to say. Just say it with a lot of words, mean nothing. Spend it with bad art. Listen to speeches of bad politicians. Listen to third-rate anchors and their demagoguery at 9 p.m. spend a day with everything that is wrong with this world. After that, next 24 hours, just take a break. Listen to Vivaldi for 10 minutes. Read Victor Hugo for half an hour. Read 93. Read any 7 sentences from La Miserables. Read the 30th sonnet of Shakespeare. Read just the opening line of Christopher Marlowe. Listen to some Beethoven, perhaps. Take a look at the paintings, a Dutch man who cut his hair, painted some flowers, some sunrises, and see what you feel. Trust me, not all the hospitals on earth, not all the pharma companies on earth can produce as much medicine to cure, to heal, that which no device can diagnose. The pain of our broken hearts, the pain of broken marriages, the pain of colleagues we don't respect, the pain of societies that are going down, the pain of economic anguish, the pain above all of hopelessness, the pain of our indifference when injustice is done before us. And that medicine lies in art. When you suddenly see at the peak of Cold War, one British spy jump across the lines, bring down the enemy camp without saying a word, suddenly made the world safe, and goes to a pub and says, shaken not stirred, my name is Bond, James Bond. It gave courage. The words of James Bond, the actions of James Bond gave courage to the Western world that someday they'll defeat the Soviet bloc before the words of Margaret Thatcher or Ronald Reagan. I think great art which can show to Indians the soul of India, which is bigger than the total import of Hinduism or Islam, can cure India. One great idea, depiction of one great Indian who can show us the way. I hope the next great Indian matching the Mahatma, who can shame us, who can cure us of our hatred and make us be a better country again. I hope she's a Dalit girl, born to a farmer perhaps, shown in art, in a book, in a movie, in a painting, in a sculpture. And it will lead to a million reflections in reality. And therefore, I believe, if you look throughout history, man has infinite capacity. Everything that man does, the greatest of actions, conquer gravity, reach the moon, change the nature of monarchy and create democracy. The most kindest of acts and the cruelest of acts, create Nazism, fascism, build concentration camps. Everything is between that which is between the ears. And that is what great art speaks to. Art can heal, art can change, art can reform. And the most beautiful thing is that capacity for art to cure ourselves and those around us is there in each one of us. There in each one of us. And if mankind has to have a hope today in a world of coronavirus where we look forward to the doctors, to the nurses, I think a broken, hurt society like India will look to agencies like Samanvay, will look to platforms like Samanvay, where each one of you bring your own creations of art, your knowledge of great art, and take it to people. Bring back one great work of art or create the next great work of art and spread it around, you would have done to cure and heal the country, and so on it spreads. Sorry, and therefore I believe what you are doing at Samanvay, what all of us are participating in webinar after webinar with you, what each one of you is doing is really the way and the only way to cure the world, to heal the world, one person at a time, one heart at a time, one soul at a time. And I'm very sure that's exactly what all of us together can achieve. Make a better world, a more peaceful world, more loving world. The hatred would find it harder to thrive, like the virus. And like cleanliness we seek, like hygiene we seek, good health we seek. A liberal world where everybody likes to be with those people who are different from him or her in every aspect of life. That ability to come together despite our differences and because of our differences, where we don't tolerate dissent but love it, we seek it, we can create that world. Art is the key to not just the lost kingdom of the past, but the great paradise that can be created tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sriram. Thank you so much. You packed, I cannot believe, in less than 40 minutes, so many ideas, examples, and very thought provoking, very inspiring, I would say, like sermon. At least that's how I felt like receiving it. And I have a few points that really intrigued me that I would like to later talk to you or discuss with you. But we have some, you know, great people here. We have Sanjeev Khandekar here, who's an artist and a poet. We have Dr. Swati Desai, you know, um, belongs to academia, does mindfulness. We have Ajit Rangnekar, Vijaya ji, Pavan, who took the initiative of building the Samanvay platform that has brought all of us, I believe, like-minded people together. Shri Pal, and a lot of people who are probably watching us on Facebook Live and YouTube. But those who are here have the privilege, or we have the privilege to listen to them and see them engaging with what you said. So I saw that Ajit has posted some comments in the chat box. So Ajit, would you like to say something? And after that, whoever wants to just respond or say a few words to reiterate, reinforce what Sriram said, or even if like disagree or add something. For example, I have something where I'm agreeing, but want like slightly different focus I have. So we will talk about it, but Ajit, yeah.
Yeah. So Sriram, I have to say thought-provoking, and especially, if I for a moment felt that I shouldn't ask a question for the next 48 hours, test it out and then go. But no, I think great ideas have always moved humanity. Very often, great ideas have been expressed through poetry, through speeches, etc., etc. But as you rightly said, as have been the most horrible of ideas, whether it was Mein Kampf or anything that else that you can. But is it necessary for art to precede it? It's more a question. I'm just curious, because if we look at India's independence struggle, and Gandhiji was not influenced; he was influenced by his own experiences. Was there art preceding it that made it a fertile ground for the country too? Because I'm only concerned about how the hell are we going to get the next revolution going, and therefore do I need to start painting something?
Well, Gandhiji is a paradox of history, and but yes, if you see Gandhiji's own acknowledgement of Leo Tolstoy. Now, Gandhiji knew the ideas of Buddha and Jesus. Gandhiji had the spiritual and religious context available to him. Yet it was the work of Leo Tolstoy that made him sure. Because what happens is art humanizes idea. You know, most people know Newton and a falling apple far more easily than gravity as an idea. It takes a while. Archimedes, that story has taken the idea of pressure to. Stories are the way in which people remember. In a world where we believe we can dispel and disagree and prove the other side wrong with facts, statistics, numbers, facts, and truths so proven rationally cannot bring a change in thought. Art humanizes ideas. Tolstoy humanized the idea of Jesus, of Buddha to Gandhiji. War and Peace firmed up Gandhiji's ideas and belief in passive resistance. So while he is always acknowledged the value of Bhagavad Gita, the Bible and everything, and Quran, etc., to his personal enlightenment and journey, spiritual journey, his ability to convert that into mass disobedience movement experiments in South Africa came ironically from the ideas of Freemasonry and social reform, land reform implanted by Tolstoy in his epic War and Peace. Similarly, if you ask lots of people in the Silicon Valley who have gone on to create billion-dollar, what are called unicorn startups, they all acknowledge with gratitude the art of Ayn Rand to say that great innovators and inventors should create society and society like the fabled Atlantic of the Greeks. If you talk to a lot of lawyers who worked on punishment, who worked on reform, they'll all acknowledge that the earliest ideas that they are working with now not come from some Justice Krishna here, but before that by the works of Dostoevsky, Crime and Punishment, and Brothers Karamazov. So yes, every time in history, and I'm telling you not just positive things, every time there's been a vacuum in art, you'll find look at the Indian art, Bollywood, for example, if you take the 80s, Bollywood was the West. 70s to 90s, the Bollywood was West. We also had an extremely mediocre, with one exception, cricket team. We had a mediocre economy. The ideas got planted. Politics followed, other things followed. Sometimes, yes, art claims to be inspired by the real events. There have been a lot of art that followed the French Revolution. There have been a lot of art that followed 9/11. There have been a lot of art that followed. But art which copies, which is journalistic in nature, not great art. It's the value creation of and by an artist, drawing from situation around, if need be, and if not necessary, but having answers to the greatest questions of mankind. These are the works of art that make a difference. So yes, we can go into many moments in history, and sometimes bizarrely very old art. The Dark Ages, when it ended and Renaissance came, the great artists did not have anything immediately preceding. So what did the great artists from Italy in particular look up to? The art of Greece, ancient Greece, which was like 9 centuries before that. So yes, art looks back, and art has always come before. I don't know if I've answered your question convincingly, Ajit.
No, I think it's a it's a very good perspective, which I obviously need to, the whole purpose of this is to get people to think, right? It's not to convince or to this thing, but to think. And certainly this is a very good answer from that point of view. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi,
Thank
Shriram.
you, Sridham. Yeah, now Swati.
Hi. First of all, thank you so much for that very thought-provoking, very impressive like ideas you presented. Thank you so much. I think what you're saying is that in some sense, the artist is responding to something that is not already there. They're sensing something from the environment. It actually brings me back to a couple of days ago with Sanjeev. I don't know if you saw that event we did, that how his art in some sense has been predicting what things are coming up. So you are saying something similar. What you're saying is great art has in some sense provoked or has expressed maybe aspirational things, and then after some time you actually see those things happening. I think that's what you're saying. So yeah, and that kind of makes sense. All the examples you gave to sort of support this idea you're presenting have been from the West. Like all the people who you express, all the artists, all the revolutions, they have been from the West. And as far as India is concerned, you said Gandhi was probably an exception. So I'm wondering, how do you in fact fit all that into the Indian art scene? I'm talking about not the contemporary Indian art scene, or maybe even contemporary Indian art scene. And I don't mean Bollywood. And maybe Bollywood is a representation of something that's happening. But if you look at anything else, any other form of art, what do you think it is saying to us? The fact that we are not that interested in it, the fact that we don't have art critiques, we don't have, any art kind of things that we are like promoting or reviewing or anything like that. What does that mean to us? That's number one. And number two, how do you relate to our old art, the ancient art? How do you relate it to the Indian history?
I'll take the second question first, Swatiji. And I was an atheist from a very young age, but I always loved when my parents used to take me in my early childhood to great temples of South India. I was born brought up in North India. Would bring us to South India and see temples. My parents, we used to go to temple, of course, to worship and have. But I believe the architecture of the temples was by itself such a profound experience. And in India, you have this experience of art which we don't even sometimes appreciate. If I'm in Hyderabad and I just go and see Charminar, just stand there, have a cup of tea. It's an experience of art. It's an ancient, okay, Charminar is only 430 odd years old, but it's an experience of art. If you live in Agra and just pass by Taj Mahal, it's an experience of art. See the Qutub Minar, or you go to Ajanta, and in India, we have all small, innocuous, unknown pieces, often connected to a religion, of course, but art is there everywhere. I believe it's this art, when we respected it, they respected our past, its values differently. We became indifferent to it. And then don't forget the attack on Indian secularism. It happened to also attack what is called an attack on a place of worship. Actually, a work of art. People talk about Babri Masjid, for example. It's just not a mosque. It's a nice work of art made a few centuries ago. Would you destroy it? So, so in that sense, there is art all around us. Some of us may not know it is art. Some of us know it is art. For example, the attack on M.F. Hussain, the attack on Rushdie's book, attack on some movies. You know, before this ability to attack ourselves randomly with abandon based on the smallest suspicion, we demonstrated this by attack on art and artists, all kinds of art. Now, ancient Indian art, Middle Indian art, contemporary Indian art. Contemporary Indian art, I think I don't know much about certain art forms. For example, painting. Ajit is an expert. A lot of others in this group can speak. Yes, my knowledge of art is very, very limited. Van Gogh and Rembrandt, few others. It's not being snobbish here. I would sincerely seek your forgiveness if you think I'm trying to be snobbish. I'm not. It is just that I am somebody with a very limited knowledge of art, of Indian art, contemporary Indian art. But I believe every form of art we engage in, whether it's Indian, whether it is Western, doesn't really matter as long as people interface with art. And again, now, the reason I range in my examples from a Christopher Marlowe's writing to a very popular third-rate Bollywood movie is to show the common strand in it. Because ideas permeate. It's not just about people copying plots or, you know, for example, that stunning poster of a boy and a girl at the edge of a ship in Titanic. It's like a painting if you see it in a different way. If you see pictures of certain directors, it's said, if you pause it at any point of time, it's a painting. So there is also that cross-fertilization of art. In a sense, therefore, my having focused on Western art might be what was available to me. But I see India as a very artistic country. Poets abound. You know, you go to a chai shop, there's a poet there. So India is a very artistic country. The way we look at it, the way we institutionalize it, the way we reward it is different. In India, we downgraded the sense of art and artist by popularizing, even romanticizing this idea of a poor, starving genius on one hand, and on the other hand, ridiculing this guy who's mad, who's hanging around, and everybody says, who is he? He's stupid, he's mad, he's crazy. Oh, he's a poet. So we tried to create this image in our lives that art is impractical, poetry doesn't feed empty stomachs, etc. It fed into a particular form of politics to keep people away from art, but people never keep away from art. They consume what they think is art. And don't forget, art is the most impractical activity in terms of economic consumption. I buy clothes, I need to wear them. I eat food, my stomach needs it. Everything is for survival and existence. But why do I want to listen to a nice song? Why do I want to watch a great painting, a great visual? Why do my eyes, my ears need great experiences? Why do I need the idea of beauty, of everlasting beauty? It's because the human soul needs it, which is why even the poorest of the poor spend money on entertainment, on songs, on movies, on theater. And religion and politics have used it. Religion has always brought in music, dance, architecture together. After all, what was Michelangelo painting for? At one level, he was being commissioned by a church. So this has been the way art has been. In India or any country, this hypothesis at large, I suspect, would work.
I have one point to make. You know, in terms of in India, we are talking about if art can be a healing force, right? That's the other aspect of art. That when there are wounds, then you can use art to heal those wounds. And I wonder the fact that Bollywood is being used as a healing. You have to admit that Bollywood movies, the lowbrow Bollywood movies, are actually healing for the masses in India. Fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know, but I'm wondering, what does that say? What does that say about our wounds? And what does it say about the healing?
Right now, no. I feel if you look at the movies, Take a movie like Padmavati, as it was in later called Padmavat. The last 10 years, I think Bollywood has spent more time along the theory which says there was an extraordinarily great Hindu country. There was a alien kind of invasion, foreign invasion of a very hostile, intolerant Islam. And they are a threat to this country then and now. I think this is the idea of that. Look at the kind of rulers, who's, there's a time you'd make movies on one set of rulers from the past. For example, Jahangir or Shah Jahan, Mughal Azam, now we are Padmavat, Khilji and Tughlaq, and, so interestingly, no, I think last 10 years, very smartly or very slyly, or whether they realized it consciously or not, Bollywood has played into creating a kind of series of movies where the terrorists were villains and the response to them was to kill them on the streets. All these, I mean, talking of Wednesday, Padmavati, you see several movies. They all have played into this idea of a very intolerant, threatening Islam, to which the answer is the glory of ancient India, like the glory that's been lost, or modern day people with quick solutions, which is, I'm so fed up with the judicial system, I'll do instant justice. These are the ideas that Bollywood has actually popularized, socialized, made people come to terms with it. Initially shocking, later on accepted. Bollywood also has done good things. For example, there's this movie by Shabana Azmi in which I think for the first time in India, the idea of lesbianism was brought to the screen. It was controversial. It was banned, I think, for a while. But over the next 15 years, the ideas of same gender marriages or love slowly through different, of course, not that they're depicted well in all of them. In some, they were ridiculed, caricatured. But nevertheless, the idea became common and popular and acceptable before 377 was finally repealed. So what's happening is, if you see strands, and this is where I bemoan the lack of critics, either in one discipline, much less so in multiple disciplines. Somebody who can see commonalities of the great themes working simultaneously in popular street theater and art exhibitions and architecture and so on and so forth. I mean, I didn't even bring in architecture, sculpture, because I, in fact, was a colleague of Ajit at ISB, where he was my boss and all that. But one of the professors at ISB said that great buildings will inspire people to build great nations. And he said that more than any other reason is the reason why ISB will produce people with greater imagination and courage, because the building is so beautiful, so big. And if you see narrow-minded colonies, we talk about ghettos, they always are very narrow, physically very narrow. Old cities, slums, they're very narrow. You have to create broad roads in slums and they won't remain slums for long.
Yeah. So in fact, I would like to give the mic to Sanjeev or to Fawzia, who may, Sanjeev, do you want to say anything? Since I did mention our event the other day.
Hello, Sanjeev.
Hello, it is fantastic. I mean, I'm quite impressive. And after listening to what you talked, immediately saying something is also a little difficult task. But to just, I mean, since it was too serious right now and too many things we talked, want to bring little humor, but still in the same lines which you spoke. This beautiful, famous quote from Oscar Wilde. We can forgive a man for making a useful thing as long as he does not admire it. The only excuse for making a useless thing is that one admires it intensely. All art is quite useless. That's what he says. And so something useless we make. Useless in the sense, in the kind of utility, and we all are living in a society which is commodity driven, consumerism, high consumerist thing. And what artist does is something which is not for that society. Unfortunately, art, this whole capitalist society has made art also commodity. That's a different thing. But definitely, making some useless thing and asking the rest of the world to admire it intensely is the job of artists, I feel. That is one thing. And second thing I feel, what you said, you also mentioned Mahatma Gandhi. I remember reading one of the fantastic essay by Arun Khopkar. It is written in Marathi. And unfortunately, many of you may not understand it because it is in Marathi language. Somebody has to translate it, where he has explained how Gandhiji himself was a great artist. Apart from that essay, all of us, we know that Faizpur Congress session, Mahatma Gandhi called none other than Nandalal Bose. And he told him that you are going to, and just now you talked about architecture. So he told Nandalal Bose that you are going to create a pendal for Faizpur Congress meet of Congress leaders and thousands and lakhs of people who are going to come there. And interestingly, Nandalal Bose used some very simple things like readily available material around Faizpur, and using that simple material, that beautiful pendal was created. Second important thing, when question came of Congress party's flag, it was Gandhi. Of course, it was a collaborative effort. There was Nandalal Bose, there were a couple of other artists, but it was Gandhi who brought the charkha on the tricolor flag, even selecting tricolor. We know that how Congress flag has changed from variety of colors and ultimately settled there. And finally, our Indian flag, tricolor. Again, Gandhi. It's one of the fantastic art where he contributed himself. So, variety of such things. Another important thing, Oliver Sacks' book, Musicophilia, all of us, we've read. Where how music heals, and Oliver Sacks a number of times also in other books and writings, he has explained how art also is an important tool to heal a common human being. And in today's context, coming back to today's context of coronavirus, where suddenly we have become, it's a lonely disease. It kills you also lonely. Nobody's there. Some of my friends who got corona and were admitted in the hospital now, what they tell mainly is, it's so lonely there. Like you're just alone there. And besides that, suddenly we have also become lonely with the mask on our face, and we're talking on telephone only. We're not meeting actual, we're not hugging, we're not shaking hands, we're not kissing, we are not going around. There's no parties, nothing. This brings loneliness. And I believe is the only one thing which man has created after, of course, domesticated animals is another thing, but still that also including art is a wonderful companion. And that's how art heals us. Art, there's nothing less than art, which is, we call a book as our companion. A painting in my room, maybe Souza, someone else, and I got so many things, and I can spend time with them. I can talk to them. I can enter into them. They enter into me, and variety of things start coming out from me and from the work of art. A small poem, you can visit and revisit. He mentioned so many important, there's so many references there, and they're fantastic. And now coming back to the his Sriram's fantastic speech, Communist Manifesto. Communist Manifesto, interestingly, when I was a young boy in college, when somebody introduced me to Marxism, and I was attending those used to be called study circles. We used to attend them, and one of the first few things when you introduce Communist Manifesto to anybody, and most of you must have at least had it, you've not read, but at least a copy in your libraries, I'm sure. It's very interesting. Karl Marx says it's not politicians, but poets bring about the revolution. So that's how it is. Definitely, art not only heals, but art is an important tool to change. And most important thing, again, is if at all, and again, I mean, I know that all of us, we have some of the books of Darwin in our library, wherever we are. Again, it is the art is the signature of evolution of human being. How did we evolve? I mean, what is evolution? What tells us from the cave paintings to today, the scale or the measurement of our evolution can be seen only reflected and articulated in the form of art. It may be word, it may be anything. So that's how I feel, and I feel that yes, what he said is right. Spending 48 hours, 48 years, whatever, and there will be. I mean, we will be able to see something which is different. And artist or a poet or a writer or a architect or a dancer or a musician. What it shows us is something different. Same thing it tells us about, but it tells us in such a way that a new dimension of the same thing comes out, and the truth comes. In fact, there is a beautiful ode of John Keats to Mahatma Gandhi, and I just read out those 4 lines. Very interesting. It says, "When old age shall this generation waste, thou shalt remain in midst of other woo than ours, a friend to man, to whom you says, beauty is truth, truth, beauty. That is all ye know on earth and all ye need to know." So Gandhi called his entire life as an experiment with truth. It says beauty is truth, truth is beauty. So that's how the art is. Thank you. Thank you for giving me opportunity to say something.
Well, sorry, Fawzia, just a word. Firstly, I can say almost very little when you bring in the ode to the Grecian urn and truth is beauty, beauty, truth. That's all you know. That's all you need to know. But to go back to your first example, I stayed away from Oscar Wilde and his preface to the picture of Dorian Gray for one reason. I will spend the next few hours only discussing that. But I'll take you back to a very important idea.
Well, just one second, but you touched Oscar Wilde in one way. I remember that when you said that, when you talked about mediocrity.
Yes, but to go back to this idea that Sanjeev brought in, it's very crucial here. Oscar Wilde says there is, and he reflects upon this, there is a human desire, yearning, and capacity to enjoy things that are beautiful and useless. What does that uselessness mean?
Right.
After all, if you are sitting at the edge of a beach watching the sunset, enjoying the sound of the breeze, the moment of the waves, and the slow slide of the sun down, and you're happy. From a perspective of any government, politics, economics, what you're doing is useless. But you deserve it. Now, all politics have tried to say that you are a means to the end. The end could be God, the end could be religion, the end could be a communist state, the end could be a state where the growth of economy happens, etc. Art, in fact, brings in a very powerful idea into every individual, gives them an experience of it, that each individual is an end by himself or herself, and no politics, no greater collective context or construct can demand that this individual sovereign be sacrificed in the name of a greater common good. The ability of Oscar Wilde to very flimsily flick and toss a line of such depth and brilliance is what makes Oscar Wilde. Fazia.
Yeah, hi. Hi, Shriram. As I said, very thought-provoking, and everyone, who added to what you said made it even more rich and enriching. I just wanted to say a few things about a couple of ideas that you mentioned and others engaged with. So the first thing is kind of the, how art heals us. So as Sanjeev said beautifully, that, it's by being our best companion. And I do, I can say that whenever, like, I, for example, like personally feel sad or depressed, and my first solution is to recite certain poems to myself. Just the same thing. It's not that it is offering a new message, just kind of interacting with it, just like sitting with it. And in terms of, as a woman, growing up in a very traditional kind of background, a traditional society of India, coming from Lucknow, Allahabad, I found role models not among people and among women around me, but I made friends with some female characters in novels, Indian novels, Urdu novels, English novels. And so I just feel like if you ask me, who are the people who influenced you most? Sometimes those are fictional characters, that influenced me most. So definitely art provides you companionship. Art offers you healing. That was one thing. And the second thing you said, that art is powerful. It has the power to change the society, to inspire people, both in good and bad ways. And that, I'm also agnostic. I don't believe in any religion. But I value, in the sense of, I understand the power of religious texts, religious practices, religious images, and all. And even for a religion like Islam, where you don't see images and rituals as kind of vibrant as you see, for example, we live in India, and as in Hinduism. But there is this great book, it's called About the Birthplace of Islam. And it actually shows that certain Quranic, excerpts in Quran you can take out. And of course, believers believe that this is how the heaven is designed by Allah. But Asghar Ali Engineer, who was a Marxist Islamic studies scholar, engineer turned Islamic studies scholar, and it's his book, and it shows that how Muhammad created, I'm doing blasphemy here, but he created he wrote poetry and kind of created a fictional world and fictional images about hell and heaven and so many other ideas and things that were able to basically inspire his people. So he was working as a community organizer. That's the image that the book presents of Muhammad. And for his purpose, he uses art or artsy language or poetry for particular purpose. And it's interesting that when he first gave his message or claimed the prophethood, people in his own community said, oh no, he's not a prophet, he's a poet. So it is very interesting. And it also reminds us that poets are prophets and artists are prophets. They have the power to do prophecy. That's exactly what you are saying, that you made this point that art precedes reality. So I agree with that, but I just thought that there was a little bit more focus in your talk on that order, that art precedes reality. and so I'm a South Asian Studies scholar, and I most of my courses I do just the opposite. So, for example, I teach a course, Popular Trends in South Asian Literature. So I look at pre-1857 literature, Indian literature, all in all languages. I include 10, 12 languages in translation, and then how drastically form itself changed, how we stopped saying ghazal and started saying nazm, just after 1857. Ghalib, who actually I feel like his Diwan-e Ghalib is my religious book, and Ghalib's best, or I would say closest student, Hali, said, don't write ghazal, write nazm. So what I'm trying to say is, suddenly we see, from a very literary point of view, form changes and a different kind of art emerges, and a whole lot of people, all genius and prophet-like in their own ways, particularly great artists, great poets, whether you talk about Iqbal or Tagore, all of them, they create art. It is art in our eyes because it presents something that is beyond reality. In the process, by going through the creative process, something higher than our average level of imagination is created, that it has higher sensibility. However, I would argue, because most of my courses are actually based on that argument, so I analyze literature and art against the backdrop of reality, socio-political ideas, because we see that they themselves, artists themselves, are rooted in their reality. They are products of their own realities. Now, you also talked about highbrow art, good art, certain periods of good art and bad art. I believe that if there are people who want to create, and they have the shock, as we say in Urdu, to create something, so they have the instinct to create. Their creator and artist in that way, but not all of them are creating good art in our, according to us or our view. So in a way, one can say, I mean, in Lucknow we say sometimes, like, to mock someone, कि उनको शौक बहुत है, ज़ौक नहीं है. so so I just say, so, but we have to kind of, even when we are mocking, we have to be sympathetic about these people who have shock and ذوق and appreciate, at least they have shock. So why do they not have ذوق? So I just believe that in certain periods, something is happening in the society where not many people, and a lot of people have the opportunity to develop ذوق, because ذوق is not necessarily natural. There is, in Urdu poetry, there is a word tarbiyat, or training. It is not necessarily you go to school and get trained to be a great artist or ghalib, but it asks for high art, or creation of high art assumes and asks for a particular kind of society that supports not only the art that is high art that is created, but facilitates the kind of environment that creates good artists. So I guess I am in the mode of activism, cultural activism right now, because as the executive director, we have just started this organization with high hopes. So we believe the reason is when masses, they lose touch with ذوق and art, and for all sorts of, again, historical reasons, economic reasons, political reasons, we cannot ignore that. Then we are in this crisis that good art is not being created. So I feel like it is a constant tension between reality and art. And as Sanjeev said, that it's like truth is beauty and beauty is truth. One way to say it is this, like, art is reality, reality is art, or they are both linked. So I just wanted to bring this kind of idea. Of course, we all agree with that, but kind of in your talk, I feel like that was not as highlighted. And I'm like really, really kind of really believe in that good art can be created by some sort of mass movement. So mass movement requires good art, but it's not just about creating good art. It's just like having some bottom-up approach, just like all religious leaders, what they did. So people who care about art, like you and me and people around here, they need to actively do something about it instead of just kind of feeling sad about the current situation. That's all. Thank you.
Fantastic. Liked it. And I fully agree that mass movement and art is very much connected. Best example is 1968. I mean, if at all, I was asked, when do you want to be there in this world? I would have loved to be 20 in 1968. Because that's the time, And a lot of things were happening, and art, new things, new poetry was being written, and art, it all has some kind of moment, and always it has happened that moment has given a push to the art.
And also, you mentioned new poetry, Sanjeev. Even like new poetry in terms of its features, the whole alienation, lonely man against in this lost in the world, all that. It was not just a literary device. It was people in that historical moment actually felt like that.
Absolutely correct.
Yeah. Okay, so Sriram, it's unless anybody else has a question, I would let you have the last word before I say my thank you.
I noticed a lot of beautiful points raised by Ajit and Swati and some others on the chat. I think it'll take a long while to respond to each of those, but fantastic points. So maybe next time we do this, we should do it in a more group discussion format than just one person's talk. But I'll go back to a very interesting aspect. Sanjeev brought humor. Humor in art, for example, and value of humor in healing the world. I was asked about 4-5 years ago on what is the cure for Islamophobia in India. This was a very powerful, strong question asked to me. And I said, learning from the Sikh experience, where in the mid-80s, if you asked an Indian to close his eyes, visualize a bearded man with a gun who wants to break the country into two and kill you, a terrorist, who is he? An Indian would have said a Sikh, a Khalistani. Yet within 20 odd years, and yes, there was a specific decade of bloodshed, then peace happened, but that whole memory of Khalistan has not remained etched in Indian experience, and Sikhs have been accepted. There is no phobia against Sikhs any longer. What made this transformation possible? Where Sikhs forgot collectively, not completely forgot. Don't forget, 1984 is a hurt. The act of transgression by the forces of going into the religious places is a hurt. But they're able to deal with it. And the rest of the country could deal with it. I believe it's singularly in the device of Sardar jokes. Santa Banta jokes that who you can laugh with, who you can laugh at becomes your friend. You can't be afraid of a person who makes you laugh. And the Mullah Nasiruddin jokes and the Hyderabadi jokes, these are the jokes. And I see a political section in powerful parties in the Muslim community who do not like humor. If
True.
we can laugh at and with Muslim, not laugh in a politically wild sort of a way where the humor is located today. That joke you crack before breaking a skull, but that joke that converts strangers into acquaintance and acquaintance into friends. And art can be a carrier of that humor. and humor can heal too. And from P.G. Woodhouse to Oscar Wilde, Henry Cecil, they've been great exponents who made a big difference. There have been people who have reflected back and said, we lived through the Great Depression of 1929, people who lived through the World War. Among them, one of the things they used was humor. And art can bring that laugh, genuine laugh of bringing two people instantly together. And don't forget, if you want to ask what human beings really think about art and artists, every religion calls God a creator, an artist. No matter how much every religion may disagree on anything else, even all religions agree, if there was a God, he was an artist. And if therefore there can be divinity in us, it is in our capacity as an artist. And therefore what is truly divine is nothing but art. And trust divinity when an atheist tells you it can heal. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much, Sriram.
Thank you. And once again,
And
delay
thank you.
at the
Yeah,
start
thank you
because of the
everyone.
internet.
I feel like, this is kind of it calls for a new conversation. We should start maybe, I don't know, a book review club or something in a more informal way. But thank you.
Definitely we should. No,
Yeah.
I think definitely we should.
Yeah.
Where we have
I will.
civilized discussion and conversation.
Yeah, because
With
I have
different views.
yes. Because I feel
Well
like
done.
there are so
Well done,
many
Sriram.
things.
Very nice.
Yeah, well done.
Very
Like there are so many things that you said, and I just feel like, I'm like, my mind is overstimulated. I want to respond to all of them, but of course we have to end this session. So we will meet again, maybe for another session on some topic. Thank you, Sanjeev. Thank you, Ajit.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vijayji. Thank you, everyone, for contributing to this.